Welcome, everyone, to the third of the Fall Spoken and Heard events sponsored by the City of Athens, Ohio, and Arts West. Many, many thanks to our sponsors. For those of you who do not know me, I am Kari Gunter-Seymour. I'm the Poet Laureate of Ohio, and I'm so pleased and excited to be here with all of you tonight. Ryan and Scott from the City of Athens are here with us tonight, and they're our technical support. They are literally running the show for us tonight, and as I say, we are very grateful. Tonight's event is being recorded and streamed live right this very minute from Facebook and will be archived on the City of Athens YouTube and the City of Athens Government Channel 1024 for sharing and for future review. I'd like to make one announcement. Our December Spoken and Heard event will be on December the 17th at 6 p.m. We will feature poet Karen Schubert, director of Lit Youngstown and author of The Compost Reader, poet L. Renee, winner of the National Silver Medal in Poetry at the NAACP's Afro-Academic, Cultural, Technological, and Scientific Olympics, and novelist and Weatherford Award finalist Carter Taylor Seton. Join us for a lively evening of poetry and story. In 1974, a group of writers and activists gathered at the Highland Center, which I discovered is an organization that provides support for grassroots organizations. From ideals and decisions formulated at that gathering, the Southern Appalachian Writers Cooperative was formed. From its very beginning, SACWA was intended to support writers in their efforts to take control of Appalachian regional identity and to take action, individually and collectively, on the issues that impact Appalachia, its land, and its people. The anthology Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel was founded in the mid-1980s by brothers Jim and Rob Webb. Their company, Appalapple Productions, Jim being a resident of Letcher County, Kentucky, and Rob of the Big Apple, produced 3 volumes of the journal before passing the torch to the Southern Appalachian Writers Cooperative in 1996. In its 30-some years of publication, Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel has produced 23 volumes of contemporary Appalachian writing and been stewarded by 15 editors and co-editors. The editorial team for Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, volume 22 and 23, and I have them right here, Appalachia Unbroken, which is 22, 22, and Appalachian Edge, 23, was Pauletta Hansel, managing editor, Sherry Cook Sanforth, and Dana Wordsmith, with Linda Parsons as the review's editor. Through Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, the Southern Appalachian Writers Cooperative continues its original mission to foster community and activism among and encourage publication of Appalachian writers. Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel has no institutional support, but rather is a grassroots effort of writers, editors, and activists from the region. The journal is currently published in cooperation with Dos Madres Press, and it's my understanding to purchase copies of either 22 or 23 volumes. You will go to the Southern Appalachian Writers website and order from there. And I'm sure Pauletta will clear that up when she comes on. And so now I'd love to introduce everyone who doesn't know, and many of you do, I know, because she is just an amazing person, Pauletta Hansel. She was the managing editor of the 2 volumes to be presented tonight, and she'll serve as master of ceremonies this evening. And briefly, I say briefly because her actual bio fills many, many pages. Pauletta Hansel is the outgoing managing editor of Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, the immediate past Poet Laureate of Cincinnati, a Weatherford Award-winning poet and workshop instructor, and a major champion of Appalachia, its land and people. And many of us here this evening are beyond proud to call her our friend. Pauletta?
Thank you so much, Kari. Thank you so much. for that lovely introduction, and for being here and allowing us to be here. And big thanks to the city of Athens. This event has been on our calendar for, gosh, I mean, maybe about a year now. And of course, when it was originally scheduled, we thought we would be sitting in the beautiful city of Athens and reading and and being able to be a part of your community in person. And we're just so grateful that, given the circumstances, that you have found a way to welcome us into your city virtually, even though we can't at the moment be there, most of us physically. Some of you I know are Athens folks. So glad to be with you. I also just want to acknowledge this is my first webinar, and so this is the first time I'm not seeing everybody's faces on the screen. And so as I'm looking at the attendees list, I'm just so glad to see so many people who are Appalachian writers and friends, and are also featured in the journal, including Lauren Crawford, who is the artist who made our beautiful cover for Appalachian Edge. So thank you all for being here, and it's lovely to see your names, even if I can't see your faces right now. So I would like to just begin by welcoming each writer individually to read their piece that is either in Appalachian Unbroken, Volume 22, or Appalachian Edge, Volume 23, or both in some cases, and a few people who have poems in only one of the two volumes may choose to read another of their poems, or perhaps another poem that is in the volume, but not by them. So there'll be a real mix of writing here about the region. So we're going to do this alphabetically. We don't have any A's, so we're going to jump up to E, and that is Cathy Essinger. And I'm going to introduce Cathy, and I'll also just say for each of you, as you hear me begin to introduce you, that's a good reminder to go ahead and unmute yourself so that you'll be ready to speak when it's time to do that. So Cathryn Essinger is the author of 4 books of poetry, most recently The Apricot and the Moon and Wings, about raising monarch butterflies, both from Dos Madres Press, and both of which I have read and are wonderful. She lives in Troy, Ohio, and tries to live up to her dog's expectations of her. So welcome, Cathy.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here, and I'm glad to go first. I have admired this journal for quite some time, but I have never submitted to it before because I thought, I'm not really sure I'm that demographic. And then I saw the Appalachian Edge, and I thought, that's me. That really is me. So I was glad to see it. I've lived everywhere, but I was very glad to be in this journal. And the poem I'm going to read is called Divinity. And it was written, it's a memory. It was written in response to a prompt about candy. So it's that kind of divinity. I'm standing on a chair next to the stove, watching my mother make divinity. She spools the hot syrup into a cup of water, pushes it into a ball, a process part alchemy, part mystery to a 4-year-old who is not allowed to stand on chairs, except when my father is away, and then only with caution to get those size 3s off that chair the moment we hear the car in the drive. I have heard the stories, tales handed down until they are family legends. An aunt scalded by hot tomatoes, my own grandmother, her hand wrapped in cold towels after a toddler reached for the coffee pot. Still, my mother lets me pull the chair closer to the bubbling pan where I can see the hot syrup spatting the top of the stove. Safer, she thinks, than rules she cannot enforce. Years later, my own children curious at the stove's hot edge, I understand my mother's solution to the problem, understand my father's fear that made rules not to be broken. It was my mother who taught me how to vent the canner, handle the sharp knife, my father who taught me how to put ice on the burn, bandage the wound. he with his desire for safety, she knowing that there is no safety until you understand the danger. I'm just going to read one. Thank you. Thank you.
Have to remember to unmute myself. Thank you so much, Kathy, for sharing that. And so I will just I'll just say as a sort of a segue into what comes next that so Kathy noted that she is in the Appalachian Edge issue, and you'll hear as we move through from folks who are reading both from Appalachian Edge and Appalachian Unbroken, is that we are a thematic journal, and we like to really have a variety of approaches to the themes that we offer. And so Kathy has offered one with that Edge poem, and you'll be hearing others as we move forward as well. And I'm also just want to say I'm keeping an eye on the attendees list, and I'm so glad that we have one of our previous editors, Frankie Wolf, is in the audience as well. And so it's great to have you here, Frankie, to see what has happened since you turned things over to us. Frankie was editor for several years and did a really marvelous job of bringing the journal into its next stage. In fact, I think she was the editor right before me, so I have a lot to thank her for. So next up is Jane Ann Fuller, and Jane Ann, I think this is your first issue. Is that true? Is Appalachian Edge your first issue? So and so that's true for Kathy as well. So it's lovely to have some folks here who are our first-time contributors. Jane Ann's poetry appears in many journals, including Women Speak, an anthology of the Women of Appalachia project, a very wonderful project that Kari spearheads. And she received the 2015 James Boatwright III Poetry Prize. So Jane Ann, it's lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Pauletta. I'm very honored to be here and excited to read. And I do want to say, Cathryn, that Divinity was my favorite candy growing up. My Aunt Mary used to make it, and we knew it was very heavenly candy, so it had an appropriate name, but it was fantastic. So I'm going to read a poem called According to the Old Farmer's Almanac, January 12, 2003, is Plow Monday. You say you're sorry. Sorry like the wind sorry, or the skin where the splinter's been. Because whatever happens, happens to you. You are a case of mistaken identity. Nobody's cat leaping through the cyclamen. The moon, a full wolf. Time for pruning. Again, not your fault. A natural phenomenon and the mother of diligence. Everything epiphany. Tradition says this is the coldest day of the year. Don't get lost in the calendar, waiting for spring. At least you live in the present, as a 12-year-old is required. The only thing you do that's required. I hated you today for 32 seconds. The buds blast, drying up before they open. Gardenia, my difficult flower. Thank you. And I'm going to read one called Birdhouse Gourds. Kari knows this one. She published it in one of the Women of Appalachia Project editions. Birdhouse Gourds. They would be something to love, to let take over my otherwise uncertain heart. Unworried, they would climb the trellis like clematis, though heavier, leaves as large as Jack's giant's palm, given the opportunity, the time. I recognize where my talents lie, in wanting, in not pruning, allowing the vine to stray. I let them climb in their fairy tale up the side of my house, stretching onto the roof, hanging down from the eaves, holding on with shoots that stick like a dream of someone I barely remember. They cut the tips of my fingers, my thumbs. This is a love story. Jack descended. Acceptable, since harsher wars have been. After all, it is here on the ground Love finds itself making a mess of things. Inedible fruit. Somewhere in there hangs a perfect home for martins, bluebirds. I just have to carve a little, gut the thing, but carefully, so the hole I am making into a doorway will fit perfectly the one who will stay. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Jane Ann. That's lovely. And good to hear your work from the Women Speak program as well, Women of Appalachia program. And I also I was again in keeping up with the attendee list. I see I'm bookended because Sherry Cook Stanforth is also here sending her thanks to all of us. And Sherry is the incoming managing editor. She'll be the editor of. She's been one of the editors of Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel for several years, but she will be taking the helm for the next issue, volume 24, which is Appalachian Witness. And I will put the link in our chat for both ordering the journal and for submitting to future journals. So next up is Sean Kilby, who I know is not too far away from Athens. So it's good to. I'm far away from you, but it's good to be here in the same room. And Sean's work appeared in our volume 22, which is Appalachia Unbroken. So we'll be kind of moving from the edge into that theme now. Sean's poems appear in many journals, including Rattle and Rise Up Review, where he won the 2017 Best of the Net nomination from them. Sean lives on a farm in southeastern Ohio in a house he and his husband built, and he works as a school counselor. So welcome, Sean.
Thank you, Pauletta, and hello, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight, and I'm already enjoying everybody's work. I'm just going to read the one poem. It's short, as things sometimes are. This is a poem for a little boy named James Spoonamore from Jackson County, Kentucky. Child Ballad. A man beats up a woman over money, drives her and her little boy into the woods, and shoves the woman off a cliff. It happens in a place where people used to hand down old stories, dressed in simple rhyme and gorgeous airs. The music was to make the story stick. For example, one does not forget a tragedy that lilts. But I can't make a story this young rhyme. The woman lives. No one cares about the man, except he hangs or rots. It takes 3 days to find the body of the boy, beaten tuneless in a forest full of birdsong. Oh, the 1,000 ways he might have spun a melody and passed it on. That art is nearly lost.
Thank you, Sean, for reading that very difficult and yet strikingly beautiful poem, a poem of witness for sure, from our Appalachian Unbroken issue. So next up, we have Herbert Woodward Martin, who is appearing in Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, both Appalachian Unbroken and Appalachian Edge. And I had the privilege of reading with Herbert he made me promise not to call him Dr. Martin, so I just stumbled over that, Herbert, sorry, in Troy, Ohio, along with Kathy a few years ago, and am delighted to have you be here with us. Herbert has published 10 volumes of poetry. His poems have been set to music by many American composers, and most recently, Nobody Know was premiered in New York City by the Harlem String Players. And it isn't here in my bio, but I happen to know he has a new book out, which is also reviewed in Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel. So if you get a copy of that, you'll be able to read about his book, and perhaps he will tell us a little bit more about that as well. So welcome, Herbert. We're glad you're here.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. And I'm not going to tell you anything more about that, but I will read the one poem. I think it is imaginary, though my mother and my aunt both baked pound cakes that everybody loved. And so this came to me as poems do from time to time. My mother knew how to bake a pound cake. There was something about her fingers and her hands that knew how to measure ingredients exactly and just how to bake them until they were golden brown and could melt the hardest heart among women and men as well. Because she was willing to watch any woman in her community who had learned from women who had learned from slaves, who themselves had a sure handle on survival. They knew where the bend in the roads were and where the rock turned into sinkholes. They were prepared to listen to what the moon and trees had to say. But my mama was clever. She knew the quality of baking powder and how it made things rise by the tablespoon. She was gifted in understanding flour by the cup, and she was aware and did not spare the wealth of butter when it came to baking a pound cake. She was acquainted with granulated sugar when it came to required sweetness. She never gave a wrong answer about cooking food. Milk flowed from her as it from her mouth like parables of thought and warnings. She knew how to turn 6 eggs into a rich batter while she gauged the heat, I think, from her oven with proper level, 300 to 50, 300 to 50 to 400 degrees would do if she wasn't in a hurry. The results, you might say, were tasty, 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 and any child hanging around the kitchen after licking the bowl and spoon would testify to the truth as if they had found religion. She turned her batter over and over with generosity and love, 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 because she was baking pound for pound the best cake any woman in the neighborhood had tasted for as long as they knew what cake was. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Herbert. That poem both makes me hungry and it makes me miss my mama. I really appreciate you reading it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next up, we have another Martin, and he had said that if I wasn't allowed to call Herbert Martin Dr. Martin, that I could call Preston Martin Dr. Martin. So here you go. Here's your honorary doctorate. Maybe not honorary. I don't know. Maybe you have one of those things.
No, I do not.
No. So Preston, this is his first appearance in Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, and Preston is in the volume 23 Appalachian Edge, but he's published poems in many journals and in the anthology Every River on Earth, writing from Appalachian, Ohio, from Ohio University Press, among others. He lives in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and chairs the Brockman Campbell Book Competition for the North Carolina Poetry Society. So welcome, Preston. We're glad you're here.
Well, thank you. And as it's been said before, I'm very proud to be in this selection with all the wonderful poets that we've heard so far and moving. And my Appalachian Edge is geographic and temporal. The long view. Chillicothe Lancaster Road runs close by the line where glaciers stalled 12,000 years ago. Out the driver's window, land lies flat and farmed while the car falls and rises along wooded ridges. On the right, proper hills grow and roll green to the Ohio, south and east. Here, an empty state park, a lone Indian mound. I walk the path around, then to the top. The ancient mound smells of new cut grass. Past the park's fences, brambles, thick, untamed. All around, I see their heads and shoulders disappearing down rows of corn stalks, shaded paths. A trick of glare, heat, reverie. The scene from afar, me on this mysterious dome, a mile-high wall of ice towering over. The July aria of insects drowns my wondering. If the past sees or cares, what amounts to a flicker in time? A chunky groundhog lumbers out of the wild, stands like a sentry, as if I'm not here. And I'm also pleased just to be virtually in Athens, Ohio. And I have another poem. It's not in Pine Mountain, it's in Pine Song, which is the Poetry Society, North Carolina Poetry Society's annual book. And this is a phrastic of a picture that came to me a long time ago. It's on Slaughter Drive there in Athens. It said, hold it to the, it's a sonnet, as I say, of sort, hold it to the light. Best man Lawrence took the picture. We printed it in '69. My burning eyes, the developing trays propped on toilet and sink, the clear wash swirling in the plastic tub. It's all right here. Her voice above party noise, music, laughter through the door. I hear it too. Pitch black borders frame the shots. The bare white house where we returned from our one-night honeymoon in Columbus. I return again in this found photo to that place blurred in twilight on the snow-brushed bank. See the lights flicker in the dark houses scattered on the close hills? And spits of snow, I think, if you hold the print close to the lamp. These eyes, it's hard to tell what is and isn't shadow. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Preston. Wonderful to hear both those poems, and the latter one too is especially appropriate in this setting, of course. So thanks for sharing it. I just got an email from Wendy McVicker, who said that her internet is not allowing her to read with us this evening, and I'm hoping that Wendy is at least able to hear. I am going to read her poem for her. But Wendy is the poet laureate of Athens, Ohio. After Kari Gunter-Seymour set the bar so high for that, Wendy has come in and done some wonderful things as well where she lives. And Wendy lives in Athens with her husband and a Hemingway cat named Dora. Her chapbooks are The Dancer's Notes and Sliced Dark, which is a collaboration of poems and pictures. And I know she has another book that will be coming out soon as well. So Wendy's poem is called Runaway, and it is in Appalachia Unbroken. She has fled to this field, seeking cover in the tall grass that waves past her shoulders, fills the air with dust. She is not afraid of snakes or stinging insects, not afraid of nettles or poison ivy. She has other fears, other torments, and they are back at the house with its windows that watch her still. She keeps her body quiet, her face blank. She doesn't let her eyes flare or even look up at the sky. She can hear the river slipping past on the other side of the hill, a promise she cannot keep. There is a wood, a stand of silent trees, and among them one she will enter, pull around her, become leaf and branch, roots sinking into darkness, and her voice muted, the wind that wakes us in the night. And that's Wendy McVicker. Wendy, I hope you are able to hear us. We miss you. Next up is Valerie Nieman, and this is not Valerie's first entry into Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel. It's been nice to have her be part of this community for a few years. Valerie's fourth novel, To the Bones, a horror mystery set in the West Virginia coalfields, appeared in 2019, has been acclaimed as a parable of capitalism and environmental degradation. Her third poetry collection, Leopard Lady, A Life in Verse, takes place amid the grit and glamour of a mid-century carnival. Welcome, Valerie. And you'll need to unmute. Yeah, there you go.
That's where I was going. I couldn't get to it. Hi, it's great to be here with people from all through the region or who were from the region and live elsewhere, like some of us in North Carolina. So I'm going to read a poem called The Size of West Virginia. And you'll notice a little hesitation because it has, between each stanza is a quotation from some news media. The Size of West Virginia. Few know the mountain state, but all recognize it. Easiest puzzle piece of the states, its awkward panhandles and pendulous gut lolling into East Virginia. A vast aquifer lake lies trapped under southeastern Greenland, larger than the size of West Virginia. It's a convenient scale for journalists, a standard candle like the Cepheid variables or type 1a supernovae that allow for dead reckoning on distant stars. As of July 15th, fires have blackened nearly 21,000 square miles. That's nearly the size of West Virginia. Cold-shouldered by its neighbors, this place makes itself so handy, a homely measuring stick for the strange, hidden, elsewhere, lost. Each year, the NOAA ship Okeanos Explorer maps an area of the seafloor the size of West Virginia. Is this size of West Virginia calculated by the erratic path around its borders? A man pushing a squealing wheel along the banks of the beautiful Ohio, dark-hearted Buffalo. Costa Rica has 51,100 square kilometers of land, which is slightly less than the size of West Virginia. Only the Mason-Dixon line draws strings straight across rough terrain, imagining it flat, speaking the same language as drag lines that tear the tops off mountains. The net forest loss rose to 6.5 million hectares per year, the equivalent to clear-cutting an area the size of West Virginia. Maybe a razor could slice it fine, trace the topography of each ridge, carve a green ribbon of West Virginia like Dido's oxhide, expansive enough to bound the nation. The 26 counties of the Irish Republic, a little more than the size of West Virginia. Measurement tells us where we've been, where we are headed. Allegheny peaks shift red at dawn, blue shadows sift into depeopled towns. Hear the long Doppler moan of a coal train always leaving. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, Valerie. It's great to hear that poem out loud. I love the many moves that it takes. So next up, we are going to be moving from poetry into fiction. I think it's fiction, stories anyway, with Walt Peterson. Walt is a writer from Pittsburgh whose work graced the pages of Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel in 2019 with his Red Dog stories told around his grandparents' kitchen table, especially by his Aunt Jen. Red Dog, the power of Western Pennsylvania hills, rising and falling like his grandmother, shaking out her apron, laughing. And Walt is in Pine Mountain Appalachian Edge as well, and I'm not sure which he's going to read from, so I get to be surprised too.
This will be from your very fine Appalachian Edge. And thank you, Pauletta, for your indomitable patience. And Kari, thank you for sponsoring this for us. Welcome to Northern Appalachia. Pittsburgh, of course, is known for steel, but also coal mining. And there's somebody who has a piece in this current one about Johnstown, Pennsylvania. I'm going to read a story that's based on a little bit on family history, and it's called Influenza. Takes place during November of 1918 during the influenza epidemic. It's along the railroad tracks in western Pennsylvania at Harmony number 1 mine. A young girl, Genevieve, looks up at a mounted horseman. The red-faced coal and iron policeman on the chestnut horse, towering above Genevieve, said, "This property belongs to the Coal and the Ocean Coal Company, Charles Berwin, president." He pauses to let the next part sink in to this blonde-haired girl with a coal smudge like rouge, "and I will arrest you for trespass." Jen opens her mouth to reply. Nothing comes out. She wishes her father were here. Suddenly, she reaches inside her coat. The policeman pulls the reins taut, and the chestnut horse neck jerks to the side, protecting the rider as if Jen might pull her father's revolver from his winter coat. Instead, she shows a windfall apple. The rider relaxes the reins and bit. The horse strains forward toward the food. Jen offers the apple carefully, avoiding the huge teeth, then scratches the horse's chin whiskers. She reaches inside the coat to get another apple. "For Christ's sake, quit feeding me horse, you." She offers the apple up to the rider. "Listen, it's me that's in charge here, not you. I don't want your rotten apple. What do you think you're doing on Mr. Berwin's property?" Her hand is not shaking now, but she pretends she doesn't understand. She is lightheaded. She is John Bosky's daughter. She is somehow brave. The answer to "what are you doing" is even one her little sister knows. Jen is taking coal off the tracks to heat their house. The coal company calls it stealing. Her parents have caught the fever and have been taken away, shivering, sweating, wrapped in blankets from their own bed. She and baby Joe have been alone for almost a week. It is cold and winter is coming. She is woman of the house. She wants to laugh at such a stupid question. "Skrobya shem poldupi," she replies. "Huh?" The cop glares. "What do you think you're doing on Mr. Berwin's private property?" "Skrobi shem poldupi." "Don't give me that malarkey." "Skrobi shem poldupi." She pretends he's hard of hearing or stupid. The brown horse with the white patch between his eyes nickers. Is the horse brighter than the man? "You people always try this mumbo jumbo on me. I know you speak in English." "Just scratching my ass" is John Bosky's favorite saying, along with a wink and a twirl of his firethorn mustache. Genevieve and Josephine, always full of questions, say, "Ah, Tatush." He pulls them closer, whispers, "You's only in coal mine with boss, not in house in front of Mamusha. Tak?" The cop seems less sure of himself now. He pulls out a work handkerchief, red like her father's, wipes his brow. "Can't you speak English?" Jen just looks. At the beginning of the school year, the principal double promoted Genevieve from 6th to 8th grade. Her beautiful teacher with the bobbed hair asked Jen to help students who don't speak well. Her parents speak only Polish at home. She understands Slovak too, but Hungarian is still a mystery. Sunday after Mass, she reads her family the Pittsburgh paper, translating from English seamlessly. She searches especially for union news of a strike and of John L. Lewis. The newspaper pictures he has eyebrows as big as winter caterpillars. She thinks this, but would never dare say at home about this leader whom her parents revere. Sergeant Malcolm Patrick O'Donoghue spits, hunky dumb. You from one of those families right off the boat, good to work underground, that's all. Genevieve doesn't react. The sergeant regrets his slur of the child standing by the tracks, then snuffs the regret like a cigarette butt. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Walt. That's a great reading of that story. I appreciate hearing it and hearing your voice for the first time. So next up is Del Marie Prenatt, who is from Southern West Virginia by way of Eastern Kentucky. Poems debuted in Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel have since appeared in the anthologies Quarried, 3 Decades of Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, and Appalachian Reckoning, A Region Responds to Hillbilly Elegy, published by West Virginia University Press. And, you know, for some reason, Del never puts in her bios that she is my goddaughter. I don't know why, but there you have it. Welcome, Dale.
Thank you. I am honored on both accounts, and I notice we are wearing the same colors tonight. So it's great to hear everybody reading. And this first one is from Appalachian Edge. Mountaineer offers driving advice during global pandemic. When the refrigerated semi-truck convoy packed with bodies peels off the hospital highway onto your 2-lane road, who knows where they go, you might keep driving unaware of what's in front of you. If you'd heard the news and knew, you might pull off to sit through the procession in deference. In the absence of road shoulders, make use of emergency escape ramps. If those trucks come at you from the opposite direction and the road is curvy, you might find yourself hugging the white line so close to the mountain face that you can smell the wet stones. It's natural. Grip the wheel till your knuckles are pale and cold while their 16 wheels haul ass. Don't close your eyes. And then on to something a little, staying in the natural world, a little shorter. This is from the previous Journal 22, Ars Poetica. The wind does not muss my hair. My skin, painted and sealed, repels water and all touch. I trike everywhere I travel and have dusty knuckles to prove it. When I dance, my joints sing arias. The singing makes me cry. And as tears collect at my chest, wildflowers spring up in blooms at my bosom. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Del Marie. Glad you're here. Next up is another first-time contributor to Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, to the Appalachian Edge issue, and that's Kevin Rippin. Kevin teaches writing as a full-time lecturer at North Carolina A&T University in Greensboro. His poetry collection, Amber Drive, was published in 2018 by Main Street Rag Publishing. He's published in journals such as Southern Poetry Review and Pittsburgh Quarterly, and now in Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel. So welcome, Kevin.
Hey, thank you. Am I coming through?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to read a poem called Johnstown, November. And it's pretty self-explanatory. Johnstown is a town that's in a valley in the Appalachian District in Pennsylvania, east of Pittsburgh by about 60 miles, and it's probably the poorest city in our state, in that state. So this is called Johnstown, November. We crept down the steep valley until we reached Kramer Pike, twisting like a thick black snake between the poisoned Stony Creek on the right and the empty wire mill on the left. Along the road, charred stacks rose where sulfur smoke once billowed, where metal scraped metals for 3 shifts. 30 years ago, Bethlehem Steel turned off its orange and blue gas flame near the Point Stadium. U.S. Steel closed every plant. We thought we could escape the furnace we lived inside as children by driving south, but molten fire forged every dream. No ignoring what the past does to a body. The iron taste still in our throats, the rust still clinging to our skin, despite years of precision scrubbing. Still, we scattered metal shavings behind us, followed them home, and here we are like it's yesterday, toiling the familiar cratered streets, sliding slow-mos past Pappy's, past Conzati's, past Yost's, past Richland Bowl, past the Incline Plane, past the Silver Drive-In, past Rexall Drugs, past Southmont Gardens, past El Rancho, gliding under the arching American elms until we finally arrived to view Eric Williams laid out at Henderson's funeral home. Poor Eric didn't make it. Sad Eric, look how the town ate him. The procession crawls up the easy grade, ends where most everyone born here ends, Grandview Cemetery. Our plots purchased when we were young, when our parents couldn't imagine us leaving, our future holes marked, ready for digging and filling. The pastor drones one last prayer over Eric's coffin while our car idles on the periphery. A quick getaway planned over the mountain before someone who's always lived here begs us to stay, before winter settles in, before the roads grow so icy there's no way out. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Kevin. We're glad you're read, glad you're part of the community. Good.
I'm very happy to be part of it. Thank you.
Good. So I am going to read a poem now for Susan Shepard, who is also unable to make it. Susan is a founding member of West Virginia Writers Incorporated. She's also performed with the Women of Appalachia spoken word poetry series and has created and published Oracle games. And Susan, unfortunately, is not feeling well, so I will need to read her poem for her. She is also a first-time Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel contributor. This poem is called Portrait of My Grandmother Wearing a Man's Suit. Blackbirds lift from her brow, touching wings over the Dutch nose like someone marked for misfortune. Her brother's suit squares the slight shoulders, its jacket opening into a painterly darkness, the kind locked behind the cellar door. Perhaps in amber light, the fuzz on her upper lip suggested some corruption. The morning Ivabelle becomes ivy, a resilient, rambling plant which sprouts like the hair that eroticizes the body. Outside, there were rushes of weather, voyages of blue, a rooster preening himself on a rotten stump, red comb jiggling like genitals. The sound of daylight was the sound of putting on clothes. The girl adjusting the starched collar as she would curls of paper, then knotting the silk tie like a man's hand at her throat. Facing in toward the basin mirror, she turned away from her brothers and fathers in a room dark enough to imagine mold in, debris of leaves and spit filling the brass spittoon. Her stare is bold and level. It's as if she's saying, the only man I belong to is the one wearing this suit. If I look long enough, it is my head swirling in the burled frame, the face broad and lunar, the misting of some melancholy spirit over her. Had she really been a boy, She would have been the boy with hands as gentle as scarves any mother would want her daughter to marry. I see you do not like girls, therefore I am not a girl. A decade later, the spare, plain woman bends to wipe pearls of moisture from her thighs, rinses the moon-dark crotch near a bowl of stars. Years before, she coughed up her lungs in a metal can, the day the flower-faced girl moved into the frame of a camera, the day she became a man. So I thank Susan for her contribution, and Susan, if you're listening, I hope you get well soon. So next up, we have another first-time contributor, and that is Annette Sisson, whom I think is among us. There she is. Hi, Annette. We're glad you're here. I lost your picture just for a minute, so you can unmute. And I will introduce you and say that Annette's poems are in several journals and a chapbook, A Casting Off by Finishing Line Press, 2019. She was named a Boat Writing Fellow in 2020, won the Porch Writers Collective Poetry Prize in 2019, and received honorable mention in Passengers Poetry Contest in 2019. And in 2020 was published in Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel. So welcome, Annette. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. This is a beautiful journal, and I'm so pleased to be part of it. It has such a lovely history. So I have two poems, and the first is from the journal, Murmuration of Starlings. 1. A cancer spreads in the sky, proliferation of 1,000 cells as masses of starlings mingle. Wings froth the air, a corpus boiling. Its protean shapes flash from wasted field to barren branch, a rupture of fevered darkness mounting in patterns of light. 2. Myeloma multiplies. Factory workers disperse like smoke. Damaged hearts choke back blood, and I am stained, blighted as pine, recalling winter rise indelible skin, green as chrysalis, as lacewing. 3. The body rises, synchronic, birds feathered in. The cloud of lift stuns, like exhalation after siege, like a bruise, like rapture. The second poem was recently published in Heartwood Literary Magazine, and the title is Cold to the Bone. Boots, 2 pairs of socks, feet cold to the bone. White shears ruffling at the window, register breathing softly. Sun lifts the room into light. I unzip the brogans, peel away thermals like leaves from corn stalks, extend bare toes to the pane, poaching the warmth collected in glass. My sister calls and calls. In Indiana, the pack of snow is splotched, gray with muck. It buries her sidewalk. Her busted shovel can't take the weight of wet snow. I buy teas, cat treats, pack a photo of our mother stirring at a hot stove. I wonder how to quell the chill, deliver boxes of warm jellied toast, pry hope loose like windshield ice, send her a morning with arms like sunlight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Annette. We're very glad to have you in the journal and to have you with us today. So next I will call Dick Westheimer, and Dick will also be reading prose. So we'll have a little variation from poetry here. But Dick is a poet as well, and he's been writing poetry in earnest since November 9th, 2016, and he'll let us do the math on that particular date. He and his wife Debbie have lived, raised 5 children, and gardened on the same plot of ground, and I will say that's in Claremont County, Ohio, for over 40 years. So Dick, we're glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. And before I begin, I'm just going to turn and make a little sound of a mandolin made by one of the characters in my little essay here. And the introduction I'm not going to read, but basically it's about a man named Green who was from Jackson County, Kentucky. I think there was another poem from Jackson County. And the good old boys and girls who gathered around him. So this was in Appalachian Unbroken. As we walked up to the house, I could hear the bass thumping, boom, 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 well before we got near the front door. Soon I could make out the roll of the banjo, followed by a mandolin's ringing tinkle and percussive chop. The door to the little house sat flung open, the early summer air on the outside mingling with the sounds within. Megan and I entered without knocking. The players who noticed us as we walked in beamed broad smiles our way and went back to their pickin'. They all sat in a circle, 5 guitarists, including Green, a couple of mandolin players, a small woman playing a full-size stand-up bass, and Dave, a bear of a man sitting in the far corner playing banjo. They sat and played, and I stood in judgment. I judged the players, I judged the music, I took stock of where I might fit in or not. The song being sung wound down, and almost immediately one of the guys let forth with a howdy. All heads turned our way, towards me, the middle-aged guy in farm clothes, and to Megan, the neighbor girl, 6 feet tall and 20 years old, of fashion model beauty. All these folks turned and smiled at us. I suspected that the old guys were very happy to lay eyes on Megan, but over the next several years I grew to understand that they were merely happy to be hospitable to anyone. Megan and I stood and listened to a few more songs. I continued to find ways to pass judgment. Then Rick, Green's son and the gregarious conscience of the group, looked up and said, "You play?" "Well, sure," I replied, "but not this sort of music." "Well, what do you play? We'd love for you to sit in. We'll try to keep up." Rick had an aw shucks quality to his voice that made the invitation seem, well, inviting. I suspected that the keeping up would have to be done by me, but I could also tell that he meant what he said. They'd try, for sure. "I'd like to, sometime, sure, but I don't have my guitar with me." I thought I was done acting out my part in this hospitality game. Asked, appreciated, and answered, I had avoided the clumsiness that would come if I tried to play with these folks. And yet I was still thinking, I can hang with them, and a whole lot more than some. One of the guys sitting with his back to me turned, thrust his guitar into my hand, got up from his seat, and motioned for me to take his place. What could I do? I clunked my way through the rest of the evening, oblivious for the entire night of my many, many musical faux pas. The playing ended and jam broke up. In between many variations of "Come on back sometime, buddy," Green walked up, clapped a sinewy arm around my shoulder, and said, "You played right good. I sure hope you come back." I hadn't played right good, not at all. I sang a song no one knew. I demonstrated with each strum how alien I was to traditional bluegrass. My playing stepped on others and added more offbeats than on, and yet I knew what Green meant by played right good, and what I meant by those same words were different. Green meant, because that's all he knows how to mean, "You are welcome here." So I'm going to skip right to the end. Just a little coda. Green's radical hospitality is as much of Green's jam as the jamming. Welcome is a word of higher order than any other in that farmhouse. It is rule and practice. All of the other rules, no swearing, no politics, no folk music, no major seventh chords. We often fail at these, but welcome, a word never spoken, is embodied by green and nurtured in all of us and never transgressed. And sadly, Green died about 4 years ago, but he is the heart and soul. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Dick, for that story, and especially for reminding us of the necessity of welcome and of hospitality. Those are values that we need to hold dear to us right now. So thank you. So I would like to, in that way, to welcome Cheryl Weigel, who was born, raised, and still lives in West Virginia. She writes from her rock-based road roots with an eye and ear to women and a heart honed to the spirituality in life. So welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you. It's an honor to appear again in this excellent publication by Pound Mountain Sand and Gravel. I'm just going to read one poem that was in the current issue, Appalachian Edge. I grew up in West Virginia, and until I left home, I didn't know I grew up poor. So this poem comes from that adult frame of mind looking back on youth. Border of poor. We lived up Steel Hollow, where fences were only barriers for cattle, no real ours or theirs. Red linoleum countertops, wall-to-wall used carpet from the funeral home. Free gas, space heaters, a spring by the driveway, later a drilled well, later still running water. 2 working parents, butter and sugar sandwiches the last week of the month. Dad puttering on Sundays, making magic from bushel baskets of parts, oily rags, crescent wrenches. Not knowing there would come books spilling with words, nouns we'd string on invisible wire, wear as necklaces, dangle from our hair. Verbs that would fill acres and acres, cross county lines, state lines, float up and down rivers, wing across oceans and icebergs, even lift into unimaginable galaxies. Words to carry us far, yet always tethered to the umbilical cord, to the umbilical pull of lung scent of cows, pile of stained work rags, 7.3 acres of red scraped earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. It's good to hear your voice as well. So I'm going to take us out as the last reader tonight, and this will be with apologies to folks who were gracious enough to also be part of the audience in the Women of Appalachia project reading at Clarksburg Library. I am lucky enough to have the same poem in two journals this year, and so I'm going to share the poem that I had also shared there. I've asked my buddy Dick Westheimer, you've already heard his voice today, to be one of the readers with me. This is a poem with multiple voices, and Dick is going to read the voice of the interviewer. The poem is called Interview. Oh, he's looking, are we good, Dick?
Yeah, can you give me, I apologize. I left it in my email.
Okay, we'll give Dick just a moment to find the poem, and I will say that while that's happening, just a couple of things. One is I've loved seeing the words that are coming in on chat from our panelists and from our attendees giving support and honor to each other's writing. That's lovely to see that. So thank you all very much. Even though you attendees, even though we only can see your names and your words, we're definitely feeling your heart there. And I'll also say that I put in chat two things. One is a link to Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, to the Southern Appalachian Writers Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel page, where you can find out about the issues that are available, Appalachian Edge and Appalachian Unbroken and our anthology Quarried. And order those if you would like to. And then also information about submission guidelines for volume 24, Appalachian Witness. April 15th is the deadline for that. So you got a little bit of time on that. And having heard the work in the journal through this reading, you'll have a sense of how your words will fit right in. So we hope to see some of your contributions. We good to go, Dick? All right, thank you. This poem is called Interview, and it begins with an epigraph. Anyone who wishes to write the truth must overcome at least 5 difficulties, and that's from Bertolt Brecht. 1, 1990.
Let's go back to 1975. Pauletta, you're...
Caught stitched at the seam of the mountain, I felt real trapped.
Pauletta, you're...
A loose thread.
Leaving and coming back.
The truth is, it was a lot looser than that.
Go on.
The truth is, my life has been a constant moving between.
Let's go back.
Over time, things mend, and it's not as if you can't see the cracks.
To 1975.
People were beginning to believe they could do something about the powers that had affected them all their lives.
So lead me through some lives here.
They were looking to their history. The pressures from the outside were kindling a strength.
Let's go back.
To find a place where people have a voice, where they never had one before.
To 1975.
The truth is, what we saw wasn't really there. There are other ways to measure. The truth,
Pauletta,
is I think it took me longer to find what didn't fit. As it was, what I chose to do was to leave and stay gone.
You're 15.
The truth is, I haven't written in that way for many years. 2, 2020. You are trying to remember what trapped meant to you then. The mountains pushing in and how the only voice you had was typed on the page. You lived 2 lives. The mirror cracked and you somewhere outside it, watching. Remember? You couldn't pass a glass without looking for your own reflection, see your hand move up to touch your own mouth. Shh, what? What did you want to tell me? There's the history on the typed page. You were a girl who wrote yourself into a woman. There is the history of the body. Shh, we don't talk about, remember? His hand pushing down your head, your mouth to where it was made you a woman. You are trying to remember trapped, the girl you want to strip away, the soft slough of her, useless to you now. The woman, all hard plains, 100 shattered shards hold girl, behind her mountains all around and pushing. There is a road, but the road is still inside you. For all your black typed words trapped on the page, you have not found it yet. You are trying. Remember. 3, 1975. Reading woman poems, my fingers reach wildly. Paper, pen, underneath the nails, I feel them, woman lines screaming for release, quick before I bite them away. You were 15 when you wrote that poem. When I wrote this poem, I was 15. I haven't written in that way for many years. 4. Let's go back, but not all the way back. 5, 15 years after I was 15, I was interviewed about being an Appalachian poet, which I wasn't anymore, not then. A poet, I mean.
Let's go back to 1975. Pauletta, you're...
The year before I turned 15, I had sex with a man 10 years older. Call it what it was. Being already a poet, I called it slant. You were raped. The angle of the mirror cocked, I called it making love. So even my eye could not catch the eye of the girl. I called myself a woman. I wanted not to be. Over the years, I wrote myself out of that girl and into silence. I haven't written in that way for many years. I am trying to write her voice back into me. I am looking to my history. I am kindling a strength. It's not as if you can't see the cracks. Thank you all. Thank you, Dick. And Kari, thank you so much. I will turn things back over to you now.
I feel like we need to take a moment of silence as we would in church after hearing all of this beautiful work. And I thank you all so, so much for lifting up your voices. And I want to thank Pauletta and all of you. I do want to remind you to add our next event to your calendars on December the 17th at 6 p.m. And Pauletta, do you want to share a little bit of information concerning the event you have organized in response to the book and movie Hillbilly Elegy?
Sure, I would be happy to. And if I could multitask, I'd put it in the chat, which I may be able to do if you give me a moment after I share it. But on Thursday, December 3rd, the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition, which I am part of, Downbound Books, which is a great independent bookstore here in Cincinnati, and West Virginia University Press will be co-sponsoring an event called Don't Cry for Us, J.D. Vance, a virtual reading by Ohio's Appalachian poets, which has been scheduled in to appear shortly after the Netflix version of Hillbilly Elegy comes out, because we think that it is a good time to be able to allow our community to hear a variety of Appalachian voices and Appalachian stories. And so Kari Gunter-Seymour will be part of that, Del Marie Prenatt, who's here, myself, Sherry Cook Stanforth, Richard Haig, Michael Henson, Michael Maloney, Bonnie Proudfoot, who I know is in the audience, and oh gosh, I'm hoping I'm not forgetting somebody from that list. But a great list of writers. It's at 7 o'clock, and it is on Zoom. It will also be a webinar as well. The registration link is one that I will look up and put into this into the chat while Kari is talking. Actually, I think probably what I do, I won't put the registration link in. I'll put the link from Downbound Books about the event, and then you can get the registration link from there. So I'll turn it back over to you while I look for that.
And just so some of you may not know that you can save the chat from tonight, so you can get all the information that has been put in there. And the way to do that is at the very, very bottom of the chat window, you'll see a little box that has 3 little dots in it. If you click on that, the very first thing it offers is save chat. So you can click on that and save the chat. Now I'm on a Mac, and what that does is it puts it into my documents folder. So anywhere you all get your, when you download something from the internet, whatever folder that usually goes in is where you will find that chat. So that gives you the chance to save information concerning the next Spoken and Heard on December 17th, and also this very important reading in response to the book and movie Hillbilly Elegy on December the 3rd. So I hope you all will save the chat for those purposes. And I don't know if I've talked long enough for you to get that
There it
information
is.
in there. All right, we are good, aren't we? So this does conclude our evening. It's just been the most marvelous, and I'm just thrilled to have everybody in. And I'm also proud to say that my work is in both of these volumes as well. And like everyone else, I'm just so proud to have a small part in Sawak, and just amazed by all of the people who are involved and have and spent the last 30 years lifting up Appalachia and keeping the organization going. 30 years is a very long time, and that's so impressive and so wonderful. So thank you all for that. And I'll just say, stay safe, friends, and remain vigilant. It would seem we're very near to the reality of a COVID-19 vaccine. And today, the Washington Post informed me that Dolly Parton donated $1 million to the development of the vaccine. And I'm so Appalachian proud about that, I can hardly stand myself. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all on December 3rd and December 17th. And I hope everyone has a beautiful, very safe at home Thanksgiving. And if you can't eat all your turkey, just put that in the freezer, because you'll have time to celebrate with loved ones later. So do be safe, everyone. And we will see you very soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kari, and thanks, City of Athens. And thank you, readers. Lovely to be with you. And thank you, audience, as well. Sorry we couldn't see your faces, but we are glad you're here.
I love this.
We could actually see, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, Annette. We could actually see all of the participants on a list. So we do know that you were here tonight, participants, and we do thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.